Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast, where faith and fishing hook up. Today's show is going to be awesome. My guest today is one of the most impactful anglers in the history of bass fishing. He's one of the most successful FLW Tour pros, and now he's taking Major League Fishing by storm. He has had 8 tour level victories, 61 top 10s, and has topped nearly $3 million in tournament earnings. And let me tell you something, this guy's a man of faith. Today, my guest on the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast, where faith and fishing hook up, Mark Rose, coming up right at you. So stay tuned. Gentlemen, welcome back to the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast, where faith and fishing hook up. Today, my guest is one of the men who has probably had one of the biggest impacts in the sport of bass fishing and outdoor ministry. FLW great, Major League Fishing great, everything else great. Mark Rose is my guest today. Mark, the great Mark Rose is here, the man who deep fries biscuits. He showed me how to deep fry biscuits. And how you doing, man? Glad you're here.
I'm doing good. I'm just letting you roll on, man.
I know, man. I know. I'm on a roll here today. I tell you, people, in my high school class, I was voted most talkative. How about that? Most talkative. That's a stretch,
Well, a lot of us enjoy hearing you talk, brother.
Well, I tell you what, there's 3 of you that listen to me. And I remember, I could always count on you, Andy, and Ott would always be there when nobody else would show up. Man, I appreciate it. I appreciate you getting on here with me today. This is really awesome. I've been wanting to have you on for a long, long time. And man, we go way back. The other day, I gave someone a copy of the DVD we did for Fishers of Men, where the first time you ever set the hook, I almost jumped out of the boat. Do you remember that? We were fishing in some little pond and you flipped into like a beaver lodge and set the hook, and it scared me to death. I didn't know a human being could move that fast, man. How in the world do you do that? Golly.
Man, I have no idea. I can't even remember where we were at fishing. It seemed like I remember the fishing trip, although I thought the first trip that we went on fishing was on Murray when that championship.
No, that was after we filmed that day. That's when we had the first one we went on was in Mississippi. We went fishing in a little private pond and filmed a video for the Fishers of Men Outdoors television show.
I do remember that. Yeah. And, gosh, I'm getting old, Chris.
And you must have caught about 30 bass off that little deal. But you set the hook so fast. Now there's some guys, I've noticed this, over the years, like when Davey Height sets the hook, Davey does the old South Carolina point, and then like that, you are like, you, Hackney, and a bunch of y'all are just like, I mean, it's just like, it's so fast and so automatic that, you don't have any
zero to crack in the whip just like that. I know.
It's unbelievable. It's scary. It's scary. I mean, I didn't know a human being could move that fast, but man, you've been doing the bass fishing game for a long time now. Tell us how you got started in professional bass fishing. Did you wake up one day and just say, hey, I think I'm going to be a pro bass fisherman? How did that happen?
No, not at all. And I think it's cool that a lot of these guys, I know several guys that had that dream from the beginning, but that wasn't my case, Chris. It was all about baseball for me. That was how I was going to make my millions. And that was all I was focused on early on was baseball, and played high school, college. And then, between your junior and senior year, reality started setting in for me. And I had lots of injuries that I was dealing with. And since those injuries, I kind of knew that things weren't going to pan out the way I wanted them to in professional baseball. So then you got to start thinking about, okay. And so I asked Christy to be, which is my wife now, to be my girlfriend in the 7th grade. So we've been together ever since. And once I realized that baseball was my life, it was all baseball up until then. And then right before high school, I came to know the Lord, and we'll probably talk about that at some point in time. But so it was God and baseball, and that was all that I had. And yeah, so once reality set in there, and I knew that, well, I started taking a couple of jobs, and my passion for sports kind of collided with my passion for the outdoors. I grew up in an outdoors family. My granddad, commercial fisherman, all my uncles, everybody, hunting, fished all their life. So had that passion, and it just collided with because that competitiveness from baseball never went away. And worked a few jobs. I was an executive with the Boy Scouts of America, had worked my way up for a little while, and realized that just wasn't what I wanted to do for a career. I liked the Boy Scouts, but yeah, a big tournament came to the Mississippi River, FLW. I got in, paid my $1,800, finished third, won $25,000.
Wow. Yeah.
Told the Chickasaw Council in Memphis, is where I was working, that yeah, today was my last day. I think I want to do this. I fished for 4 days here, and I won 25,000, and that's about 3/4 of my salary here for an entire year. So yeah, I'm out.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That was good. But you did give up a lot of bass fishing ponds. Those Boy Scouts of America have lots of really good ponds at a lot of their camps and stuff. And so, but
Yeah.
I think you made the right move.
Yeah, I was camp director for a couple years, and yeah, it was the right move for me, Chris.
Right.
It was, I did a lot after winning that. I say that it was the next week. It was not the next week. I spent a lot of time with my wife, my pastor, on my knees talking to my Savior. Just there was a lot of thought went into that whole process. There really was, but I was wanting to do something where I could live out my faith and reach people, of course, and then I needed to be a good steward for my family, make a good living, and fishing it all came back to fishing. And so good thing about it is right after that, I put in to qualify for the BP Top 100 at the time, which is the elites now.
Right. Yeah.
And I fished the opens that first year, qualified, did good in some other tournament, and never had to tap into that 25. And about that time, we got a baby on the way. And so, yeah, it was working out from the beginning. And then we started having to tap into my wife's teaching salary, because there were some rough times after a couple of years. And then after about 7 or 8 years, won my first one. Then for the
where was that, Mark? What was your first win?
So I just made a living at fishing for 7 or 8 years, and just that 30,000 one year, 80,000 one year, 60,000 to 40,000 most year. So we were just making a living. My wife's teaching salary was supplement, so we were making it. We were comfortable, but I needed a win, and I just really needed a win. And I began getting this love for offshore fishing. I noticed, I was watching David Fritz one day in an old Bassmasters, and I said, he did in about 5 casts what I normally try to do for an entire day's fishing, 8 hours, right, and that's catch 5 fish.
Yeah.
And I said, that's what I want to get. He's tapping into those fish that don't see a bait all the time. So that's when I started. I became good friends with Randy Haynes over in Tennessee River. Yeah. And well, before I became good friends with him, I won my first one. So Kelly Jordan went to Kentucky Lake,
right,
on Ultimate Match Fishing, and shocked the whole world with this hubcap.
Yep.
With the treble hook.
Yeah, big old spoon. Yeah.
So I was so intrigued with that show. I started calling around. I'm finding out who on Lake Fork has this big spoon, because he told about it, right, but he kind of kept it. And I've just I figured out this guy, and I talked to him for 3 hours on the phone and then 4 hours the next day. And I just learned all about this big spoon. Well, it was right about that time, 07-ish, somewhere along in there, that I got a hold of. He sent me like 4 of them. And I took it to Pickwick Lake, and I just found me a hump out there. And actually, as a matter of fact, Keith Amerson was fishing with me one day, and he said, "Yeah, I caught some fish off out on one of these humps." And I was fishing with him, and so I had an area where there was some fish. I just said, "I'm gonna go over here. I'm gonna take this spoon over here where I fished with Keith the other day and check this out." And man, I caught bluegill, catfish, white catfish, channel catfish, gar, striper, white. I caught everything in the ecosystem. And I was like, yeah, I got the bait. And we went fished another tournament, came back. It was during the cutoff time in there, let that time pass, came back, and they were all over it, man. And I won that tournament. And from that time, so the last day of that tournament, Randy Haynes was idling a spot when I got my main hole. When I got there, didn't know him from Adam, and I asked him if I could fish. He said, "Sure." I didn't, he didn't know I was fishing there, and I went on to win the tournament. I ran on to Randy at the weigh-in, and we talked, had a conversation, and just was intrigued about what he knew about offshore fishing. We became good friends. And I kind of fed off of his passion for offshore fishing. He fed off of mine for shallow fishing. And for the next 7 years, I won a tournament every single year.
Wow.
And or the next 6 years, I won a tournament every year. And that was just kind of, it was kind of unheard of. And
that's amazing.
That made my career.
I mean, it's wild how many people David Fritz affected. I mean, it really is. Cause I remember, I'm going to tell you my Fritz story. So when he won the classic on that Pose crankbait, I stood in line for 2 hours in Fort Worth, Texas to get that bait. I bought his rod. I took it to Santee Cooper, and on the first cast, I hung the crankbait up, and I was trying to get it unhooked, and the rod got around the cleat and broke the rod in half. So I lost the crankbait and broke the rod and never made but one cast with it in my entire life. But that was the deal. So it didn't work so well for me. It didn't.
Well, I got one in. So I bought about $500 worth of those crankbaits that I didn't even have the money, but I spent it on them. And I took a drill and some lead and some weights and did all the way. And I ruined every crankbait that, I mean, none of them are any good anymore.
Yeah, that's what he would talk about, melting that stuff down and weighting them down. And man, I did. I tell you what, I had a lot of those Post crankbaits that I bought, and I don't think I ever really caught too much. I know there's some guys that hammer them on those things, but that's really a great deal. So
I'm thankful that he created the DT, because it's a little better crankbait. It's a little easier to throw than the old Pose.
That thing's amazing. It really is. That's an amazing bait. That's, and fishing has come so far with the different types of baits. It's just kind of getting, exponential. It seems like it's getting better and better and better. One of the trends that I hate is that when fish started eating Japanese food, I mean, that's when I tell people that's when fishing really got expensive. I remember the first time I bought like a $25 rattle trap, and so that was it's been tough, but those baits are, get better and better and better.
I know what you mean. It can get crazy. I'm thankful that I work for a company like Strike King that does have a pretty good price point on most of its baits, and they all work.
They really do. They really do. I mean, without Strike King, I probably wouldn't catch 90% of the fish I catch are probably on a Strike King bait right now. So, but hey, so you talked about the time that me and you fished. I talked you into, I had a buddy of mine, he's kind of the father of the modern day wild game banquet. His name is Jason Cruz. And Jason pastors a church now over in Nashville, Tennessee, but he was kind of the first guy that ever really started, doing the wild game banquets and marketing the wild game banquets and just showing churches that this is a way to meet guys where they are and to reach guys will never darken the doors of a church. And so he was that kind of guy, and he wanted to do a show. He was, filming all kind of videos, and he wanted to do a show on how a pro practices. And I told him, I said, he said, who do you know? And I said, well, I'll ask Mark Rose. I said, but you got to understand, this is like the FLW championship. And so, we can't, be hounding him the whole time. You're in the boat, you can film him and ask him a question every now and then. And I'm going to tell you something today that I never probably got a chance to tell you during that tournament. Now, you led the tournament the first day after that. Do you remember that? You led the tournament. And while we were in practice, I mean, Jason was just talking your ears off. He was just kind of asking you question after question. And one time you looked at me and said, Chris, you got to get him under control. And I was like, yeah. But so somebody called you in the middle of the tournament, and you took the call and in practice. And, I told Jason, I said, no matter what happens, don't tell him where fish are. You can't tell him, he can't get any information from us whatsoever. Well, you had your back to it, and we were fishing a bridge, and they started blowing up behind you. I mean, they were just poop everywhere. And I was like putting my hand over Jason's face where you can't tell him, you can't say anything like that. We going, over there. Yeah, it was pretty bad, but anyway, but you had a great tournament, and led it the first day, and that was down on Murray. So what do you think? What your style of fishing? I mean, I've seen you do deep fishing. I've seen you throw a jig, and like I said, you're the fastest jig guy I've ever seen in my life. And I've been in a boat with, everybody, but as far as lakes go, what is your lake? What is like ideal for Mark Rose? If you say, okay, this is my kind of tournament, this is the lake I want to go to. What is your lake?
I've had the most success offshore fishing, of course. So deep, there's just something about, Chris, making a long cast with a Strike King 6XD and one of my signature series rods, and just cranking that thing down there where you mark some fish. And there's just something about that when you're cranking that. It's like the crankbait and then all of a sudden it kind of stops, and your hand just kind of falls off of it for a second, and you just feel that. I don't think there's any better feeling that I could feel now than to be on a Tennessee River system, finding a school of fish in about 15 to 18 foot of water, and feeling that deep head shake on it. So it'd have to be a Tennessee River deep crankbait bite. I say deep, mid-range to deep crankbait. But having said that, man, I really like, the Great Lakes. I like smallmouth fishing. I like finesse tactics. I've been blessed through a lot of prayer and a lot of hard work fishing, to have a good understanding and a good feel for being versatile. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you I can do it all, Chris, but I can tell you that I'm comfortable in lots of different, and I enjoy. I mean, what's better than a topwater bite or a jig bite in a bush? I really like it all. But if I had to take my preference on how I would like to be fishing, it's something about them head shakes on them deep crankbait fish.
Deep crankbait lakes. I tell you, the forward facing sonar, how has that affected your fishing? I know it's pretty much changed it for a lot of guys. It's made, I heard Jay Yella say one time, he said, he knows a lot of mediocre fishermen that got a lot better. But guys like me, it hadn't helped me at all, but it didn't, but how has that changed the sport? Did you ever think you'd see that? You ever think you'd see anything like that?
No, not so, it's the traditional way. Just being able to see them below the boat was pretty special. And then when it got to where I could find them, I could hunt, so to speak, and not fishing, but be able to see them 120 feet away from me was pretty neat. And then being able to even have more detail that they're underneath me idling was pretty cool with down scan and side scan. But to be able to actually see them live, moving, swimming in front of me out 60, 70, 80 feet. making a cast, seeing my cast through a scale on the screen to know how deep it is and how far the deep, how deep the fish are down, and then how they react to my action, whether I speed it up and what they do and slow it down and what they do, and then actually watch them eat it and watch them reel it in. That is just something that's pretty mind blowing. And no, I didn't think that I would ever see that in my career. Having said that, I don't think that I'm done seeing new things. I think there's going to be an actual video where we're going to see the species, and we're going to see there's more. This technology is not done. And in some ways I like it. In some ways it's really changing the tournament fishing category, or the tournament fishing, the way we make our living, because it's really, I think there's going to be rules starting to take place that relate to just forward facing sonar. There's going to have to be things addressed, or there's going to have to be tournament formats adjusted for forward facing sonar, because it's going to get to that level. It's not there right now.
Right.
Still think it's manageable, but I think it's going to get to a point to where either you're going to have a league that is non-forward facing sonar, or you're going to see changes being made or rules being made just for forward. It's not bad. None of it's bad. I don't, in some instances, it may not be the healthiest thing, but for the most part, it's a good thing for our sport. It's certainly good for electronic sales.
Yeah.
And
no doubt about that.
Yeah. And electronics companies do a lot for our sport. They support the budgets, that we're allowed to be able to have a professional fishing league. A lot of these electronic companies are behind that. So it's all good, but there's got to be some limits. There needs to be a board that regulates this kind of thing. And when it gets to a certain level, it's like, that's fine if we want to continue to do it for recreational fishing, but for actual tournament fishing, there's got to be some limits drawn at some point in time.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's going to be interesting to see how that progresses and how it all shakes out in the end, from the high school level all the way up to the professional fishing level. It seems like it's just an absolute game changer, and made us think in ways that, like you said, it not necessarily bad or good, just different. It's just made everybody think a little differently, and how you get ready and how you strategize and all the things that you do. So now listen, I really want to get up there and fish in your ponds up there. That's one of the things I've been waiting for a big invite to come up there and fish. I know I've got there and I got a chance to speak at your church, but there's two things I want to do with Mark Rose. Number one, I want to go fishing with him again. And number two, I want to go deer hunting with you, man. Golly.
Yeah.
I see some of those deer that you, when did you get the deer hunting bug? When did that happen in your life?
It's early on. Like I said, we're a hunting and fishing family, and I've been doing that for a long time. Even got my girls involved, and they're big deer hunters. But for the longest time, we lived in a little 1,200 square foot home in Marion, and we had 2 girls, a dog, and me and my wife in there. And and then we graduated up just a little bit. And I'm not a big fan of these great big notes. And so I didn't ever, although I won a tournament, and was having a little more success sponsor wise, I didn't really want to build this big house and stuff like that. So it just, after this last, I think we won a couple tournaments, and then I think it was the Angler of the Year money that I purchased some land out here. And then when I won a couple of tournaments, I took some equity from my home and used some of that money, and we built ended up buying about 67 acres, I believe is what we got, but it joins 7,000 acres of sanctuary pretty much.
Wow.
It's not, you don't hunt it. So
yeah,
you can take 60 acres, and if it connects to 7,000 acres, it's
Exactly.
like you got that nobody can hunt. It's like you got 7,000 and
That's
67
right.
acres.
Yeah.
So it was just it was a blessing from the, I feel like I as best I could, I tried to honor God in my career, and He has certainly blessed me beyond measures. It's not like I win every tournament or anything, but He certainly helped me make a living, and
Right.
we've been blessed with a lot of extras, and through our land and everything. We didn't build no giant house or anything. We built it for when we're empty nesters.
Right. Yeah.
But we've just been blessed, Chris, and we got some good deer hunting and good fishing. So, and
Yeah,
it was certainly a blessing to have you out speaking at our church at Angels Way Baptist Church, and we'll have you back out again. And
man,
I
that was
don't know
fun.
that I had this house then,
Yeah,
but
I don't know if you did or not. I know that one time I went to your house a long time ago, and you deep fried biscuits, and that was I've always remembered that, and I need to go do that
yeah, it
again.
was something my
Although,
granddad did. Every time he cooked fish, he would take a can of he'd just get the cheapest biscuits you could get at the grocery store, just drop them in there. They're done in less than a minute, and you serve honey with them. And man,
they were good, no doubt,
it's on
no doubt
time
about it.
with some fish and pickles and fries and onion.
Yeah. Well, hey, you grew up in a family of faith, and so tell us about how you came to know the Lord, man. What was that journey?
Well, just grew up 100% boy, just living, kind of for Mark. But that's the only way I knew how. At the time, no, it wasn't. There wasn't a lot of the love of God and the gospel being taught to me as a child. But it was in the 11th grade that I was in a little high school fraternity, bunch of athletes mostly, and we had to do a good turn every month on our record. We had to do something, go pick up trash, go visit nursing home, or go to church. Was one of the ones that you could check that box. And we went to Vanderbilt Avenue Baptist Church one Sunday because Keith Garner, one of the guys in our high school fraternity, is Delta Sigma. His dad was the preacher there, Brother Bill Garner. And so I went there with the group. And that was really, I sat down on the front row, Chris, and that was really for the first time. I would go to church as a kid with my mom and granddad, and I'd fall asleep in their lap and blah, 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 but never really conviction or being drawn that the Bible taught. None of that, but there was something about that Sunday morning. Because I sat down right on the front row, and you've heard people talk about how the preacher was preaching to you, and but the Holy Spirit did something with me that particular Sunday morning in the 11th grade, and I sat there and I felt being drawn to God, and I felt conviction, and ironically enough, Keith and I became good friends right about that time. He lived right around the corner from me. And I could just tell that he would keep inviting me back to Angels Way. And I could tell his dad was, had the Sunday school class, the youth group praying for me. And I could just tell that they were reaching out to me. As a church tries to do.
Right.
And because they knew I was lost, and that this here was some fertile ground right here that we need. So I kept wanting to go down the aisle at the invitation time. I just, man, I was being drawn. God was doing something special in my heart. Didn't really know what that was.
Yeah.
But as I started hearing invitations being given, and the gospel and the meaning of salvation and everything, I wanted to get up out of my seat every Sunday and go down that aisle. But pride welled up, and there was athletes over there, cheerleaders, or some people, and I was worried about what they would think of me. I was worried about, well, if I get up, that would mean that I'm a bad person. I would worried about the judgmental part, that they would, if I stood up in front of a congregation, that they would judge me. Long story short, we're one Sunday night, I believe it was, I Yes, it was on a Sunday night, and I went into Brother Bill's office after the service, after everybody had left, and I had some tears in my eyes, and I think he just knew. He had a little smirk with the side of his, and he was a little round man, and he had one of those little smirks, kind of like Elmer Fudd, and
Yeah.
he he walked over, he reached over my head, he closed the door behind him. I think he knew what was fixing to happen. He put his arm around me and he just looked at me and kind of put both hands on his chest and looked at me square in the eye, and he said, "You're ready to get saved, aren't you, young man?" And I said, "Man, I am. Yes, I am. I've been wanting to go down that aisle, but I just can't." And he said, "I know exactly what you're talking about." Anyway, we prayed right there, and he led me in a prayer of salvation. And I talked to God and just poured my heart out to him. And God heard me right there that night and saved me. And man, that next Sunday, I never will forget, Chris. He asked me to walk for, and when it was time for that salvation, or for the invitation that particular time, I felt like I had a suit of armor
Right.
on.
It's like,
You couldn't have stopped
yeah,
me from going
right.
up.
Yeah.
And I got out, and this is what I want anybody to hear, that if you're struggling with that, because I know there's people out there
Yeah.
that struggle
Yeah, they
with
do.
it. When I looked out across that congregation, I saw teary-eyed sinners just like me, that
Yeah.
nobody out there hadn't, at some point in time, if they were saved, didn't do exactly what I was doing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they just teary-eyed people that were just saw another child, and enter the kingdom. And yeah, they were proud of me. Went forward, and it was, the church said yes when he said we're going to accept him as a member of the
Yeah.
church, because I wanted to become a member too. And from that moment on, my wife had kind of been out of church, and it wasn't my wife at the time, but
Right. Yeah.
we were boyfriend and girlfriend then. She got involved, got plugged in. My dad had not, he got saved early on as a young man, but and was baptized in the St. Francis River early in his high
Right.
school. He got plugged back in, and it was just my granddad started coming there, and yeah, it was just pretty special time.
Well, man, God, you have, of all the people I know, you've used your platform to glorify God and everything that you do. There's nobody on the bass fishing scene that doesn't know Mark Rose is serious about his relationship to God, man. And that's awesome. And so now I'm going to clear up something, because a lot of people, some people, not a lot, but some people come to me and go, "Chris, why in the world did Mark Rose start doing Major League Fishing's devotional?" I said, "Because I asked him to." Because I said, he was doing, I knew that you were doing fishing church over on Major League Fishing. And I came to you and told you, I said, "Why don't you do fishing church at Major League Fishing? Why don't you do that?" And it was such a natural, progression. And then COVID hit, and it was a great time for me. It helped me. I felt bad because I was killing myself. I was flying back and forth. I'd go to Bassmaster and I'd go to Major League Fishing. It was just crazy. And it was just a God thing that, when I said, "Hey, why don't you start doing that?" And you came in, but, the guy that won my boat this year, we call him Taco Tim. He owns a taco restaurant over in Oklahoma, but Tim White, man, he loves fishing church, man. He's like, I will ride across the country to go to fishing church. And I think he did. I think he was down there at Lake Fork when you guys had fishing church, but he's like, man, I love it. And it's so awesome every week. Even when I'm not preaching somewhere, if I'm not going, somewhere, I always try to tune in to fishing church. And I want to thank you guys, man. You guys prayed for my wife, every single fishing church. I mean, every single one, before she passed, you guys prayed for her and prayed for my family. And man, it was such a blessing, just to know it was that many people. Literally, we tried to add it up one time. There were literally thousands and thousands of people praying for my wife. And somebody said the other day, she said, "Man, Chris, what, God didn't answer that prayer." Well, he did answer the prayer. He said, no, she's coming to be with me. and so that's what, but it's such a blessing to be able to see someone who fully realizes, a professional angler. And this is what I challenge the Bass pros. I challenge them, Bass Elite guys. I challenge them every single time I try to meet with them to use your platform. The platform that God has given you is not just so you can make a lot of money, even though that's a part of it, all the stuff or it's not just to say, hey, look at me, I'm a great fisherman. It's to deflect that glory to God. Is say, this is what God, and you do that so well, man. I appreciate that so much.
Well, Chris, you've been such a big instrumental part of my outdoor ministry as well. You may not know it, but when I first came a professional fisherman, there were people like Jay Yellis and Alton and Mark Davis and Glenn Chapelier who
Right, yeah.
I first started realizing what outdoor ministry was when I started doing some things with Glenn, and yourself. Whenever I first met, being able to do the things that we have, the outdoor ministry functions where we're spoken out together, and you just, the way you can bring humor and just your knowledge of the Bible, there's nobody else that can do it like Chris Wells. I'm just telling you, because you have a God-given gift to understand outdoorsmen, understand fishermen, speak the lingo in a funny, humorous way, and be able to drive that nail home with the gospel to outdoorsmen. And you've been a big part of that. And yeah, when Major League Fishing came along, nobody knew that this came out of left field.
Right,
I mean, this
yeah.
caught us all by, you were, working with the BASS at the time, and this whole, and then as a fisherman, I had been convicted a few years before to start doing fishing church on Sunday mornings.
Right.
It was a Sunday morning thing, kind of putting God first on Sunday mornings, because that's the time when our country, honors God and worships him, and it's biblical, and it talks about not, to keep that Sabbath holy and everything. And we know that there's different days but we have set aside Sunday morning to worship God. And that was pretty special in my life. It was something that I needed. It was how I got fed early on as a Christian, not having it, being fed to me at home. It was my church family. And so traditional church was very important to me. And I just started realizing that when we're all, we got them from California to the Carolinas, from Florida to as far as you can go north, pretty much. Michigan, we got them everywhere. So people are all coming together, and people who go to church with their family, and that's a tradition and something important in their lives for a family. We didn't have that. We didn't have, unless you went to a new church or a strange church in a new town. We didn't have it. So it was a Sunday morning coming together, a way to honor God with the service crews, boat officials, all that. And again, Major League Fishing was new. So I just tried to incorporate, and you had traditional focus groups and stuff like that. And we were getting kind of, you were being, I don't see how you managed it all. You were being, had to fly in and do it. You was having to fly in and do, and then some places the logistics was wrong for focus, and we had to, people would all couldn't come to a certain, so it just got to a point to where, you came to me and said, can you handle this fishing church thing on the Major League Fishing side and let me focus on it, and it just seemed it makes sense. But
God works things out.
But man, Chris, you do such a good job with outdoor ministry. God has blessed you with a special talent that nobody else could do. You're ordained. You can be able to do all the, ordinances that might need to be done out there on the tournament trail. And you've got the words people. I am just simply a fisherman that loves the Lord and wants to try to bring a message on Sunday morning. But you are so much more than that, brother. And you have blessed so many people throughout your work in outdoor ministry.
Brother, I appreciate your kind words. I really do. So, all right, before I start tearing up again, I'm gonna move to the levity. So I ask everybody to do an impersonation of another angler. Now, you know that impersonations are the highest form of flattery, and we've had some great impersonations. We've had some pretty horrible impersonations, but if you were gonna do an impersonation of some other pro fisherman, who would that be? And we've had lots of people. We've had several people do Edwin Evers. We've had several Cliff Crochets. We had the best Gerald Swindle I've ever heard in my life. Did Mark Prudham, the turkey guy, does Gerald Swindle better than Gerald Swindle. And so it's so who you got, man? What do you think?
I'm thinking off the cuff, man, this is all right. I got one. Well, maybe I don't. No, I got one. I got one. Hi, folks. This is Wesley Strader. Today we're coming to Watts Bar, the Major League Fishing this tournament. If Yins would just come along with me for the ride, I'm going to be throwing a spinner bait, and I'm going to be catching them out here on these Tennessee River ledges. And Yins just got to come up here to East Tennessee. It's the best fishing you ever want to see. Hey, Yins, be quiet over there. Hey, Yins, go on over yonder. And me and these people over here fixing to have this bass tournament, Major League. I'm sorry, folks. These guys are interrupting me. My name is Wesley Strader, y'all. Peace out.
Let me tell you it's like I told this to Mark Prudham. I said, you're channeling Gerald Swindle. You were just channeling Wesley Strader, man. I could picture him in my mind saying that. That was great, man. That's the deal. I can't wait for him to see that. That's going to be an awesome deal.
Gerald Swindle. He would be an easy. Gerald would be an easy one to do too. He could just get into a little rant with him.
He is so much fun. I tell you what, that guy, he is such a blast, and all the guys in both tours are just great guys. And all the tours. I mean, it's been a blessing for me over the years because, as guys move to other tours and stuff like that, it helps you build relationships with all over the place.
I can do an Andy Montgomery without saying a word.
Please do an Andy Montgomery. We'd love that. Yeah.
I can do it without saying a word.
So JD Blackburn, I had him on the program, and he did Andy without even saying Andy's name. He just said, you ever see these guys that they talk one way, like they're from the South, real draw and stuff. And then the moment they get into a fishing commercial, they start pronouncing their G's, and they're real pristine, they're real trying to get it real, to get fishing like that. So, and I tell you what, I love it. I love all you guys, and man, you guys do a great job. But man, I want to thank you for being my guest today. I know it's been tough, us getting together and getting a hold of one another. We've been running and gunning, and
Yes.
I've had a bunch of stuff going on, but I appreciate you so much. And so, where are you headed next? Where's the next tournament you're headed to, or can you tell us?
I had to think. Yeah, I can tell you. These aren't the cups. This is just straight up Bass Pro Tour. I'm fishing the Bass Pro Tour and the Tackle Warehouse Pro Circuit this year. Why I did that, I have no idea. I just found a little fountain of youth or something, but I'm going to Watts Bar, and that's what made me think of Wesley Strader. I'm staying with him next week, and so I have it was easy for me to come up with his name. But yeah, we're going to Watts Bar next week, Tennessee River, and then I leave there and go straight to the James River, which I've never been to.
Wow,
It's hard to believe I've been doing this 23 years, and we can find a lake that I've never been to.
Right, yeah.
And the James River is one of them. It's just I don't think there's been maybe an Everstar or back in the day, or I know there's been some Bass Opens.
Hank Parker won one way back in the day on the James River by riding 1,000,000 miles or something like that. But so
don't tell me
I can't say anything. So I know. Believe me, I've been hanging around James Niggemeyer enough to know if I say anything, James is going to hit me in the face. So it's he didn't really hit me, but anyway, well, cool deal, man. I want to thank you for being my guest here today. I appreciate it so very much. And man, we wish you well, and tell Wesley Strader I said hello. Well, folks, that's another podcast. Mark Rose on the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast, where faith and fishing hook up. We'll see you next time.